Hello. So there is another story that I wanted you guys to look at. It's obviously about the economy, which is in the shitter. Basically, it's about the $700 billion bailout and the fact that the feds are now wanting to divert that money elsewhere other than in defaulted mortgages. So, watch the video, and then I will have a few questions afterwards, and I'd love to hear from you guys on what you feel, how you feel about the issue, and so on and so forth. So, here goes.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. It's already being called a $700 billion switcheroo. You remember that bailout package of $700 billion in taxpayer money that was meant to buy up bad mortgage debt because the feds told us that's what they had to do. But today they announced that money is going in a different direction now. Almost half of it's already gone directly onto banks' balance sheets. The rest will now go to companies that make the loans to consumers for cars and student loans and credit cards. Right now, the problem is consumers aren't borrowing or spending, and thus the change to try to bolster the economy, which of course remains in the midst of deep trouble. Look at the stock market today. The Dow lost more than 411 points, almost 5% of its value. We begin tonight with CNBC's Scott Cohn, where they need some spending this season. Macy's Herald Square here in New York. Scott, good evening.
Good evening to you, Brian. This is supposed to be a time of joy and anticipation here in Herald Square, but today the CEO of Macy's, which just reported a $44 million loss and announced cost cuts going into the holiday season, said this season will be a nail-biter. And once again, the government is talking bailout. Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson says the crisis has spread.
Our financial system remains fragile.
So now he wants to divert some of the $700 billion that was supposed to help banks get bad mortgages off their books to prop up the consumer market, credit cards, auto loans, and student loans.
This market, which is vital for lending and growth, has for all practical purposes ground to a halt.
Without access to credit, shoppers are tightening their purse strings. Paul Dye and his family have canceled their holiday travel plans. They're even putting off their shopping.
With everything that's going on in the economy and the job market and whatnot, a little uncertainty in our household, so it'll be a tight Christmas.
Well, this is as bad as it gets.
More than 40% of shoppers in one survey are cutting their holiday budgets this year. That's the largest number since 1995. Experts are predicting the first real decline in holiday sales in more than 20 years.
This is sort of a BYOB potluck Christmas, a Secret Santa Christmas.
Even before the holidays, retailers are feeling the pinch. Circuit City, unable to hold out, filing for bankruptcy this week, putting added pressure on competitor Best Buy to lower prices. Starbucks posting an 8% drop in U.S. sales last quarter as consumers go for the cheaper coffee at McDonald's, where sales are up. Even bookstores, normally somewhat immune to recessions, are bracing themselves. In an internal memo obtained by the Wall Street Journal, the chairman of Barnes & Noble says that never in all his years as a bookseller has he seen a retail climate this bad. Consumers are bracing themselves too, which doesn't bode well for a quick recovery. Cutting back now as part of a long-range plan.
We're just trying to make sure we do some smart spending instead of this overspending this year, just so we can plan and go into the new year with a great financial plan.
This diversion of bailout funds does not include the auto industry, which is still hoping that some of that money will go its way. But Secretary Paulson says the purpose of the program is to ease up the flow of credit. Saving the big three, Brian, is another matter.
Scott Cohn on why they're hoping for a miracle on 34th Street and elsewhere. Scott, thanks. CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Leisman is with us tonight with more on what the Treasury Secretary had to say today. And Steve, why this switch? We were told that buying up all that bad mortgage debt was more important, that it was key to any recovery.
Well, Brian, I think one of the ways to think about this is a quarterback steps up to the line and sees a bunch of linebackers about to blitz him, and he called it audible. The situation, Paulson says, got measurably worse, so they needed new types of measures to address it. The other thing is I think they realized that there's so much mortgage debt out there that the $700 billion was not going to go far enough, which agreed that was the way they sold it. But basically they're saying that the whole situation has changed in a dramatic way, and they need to do something about these consumer loans where a market has virtually ground to a halt.
Well, Steve, if this was a good move, usually the markets like good news. Why were the markets in the tank today?
Well, I think the market's in the tank for a whole bunch of reasons that have to do with the market alone. You began the day with Circuit City and Best Buy giving some very bad news this morning. And, of course, you capped it, on the other hand, at the end of the day with Intel dramatically reducing its earnings and its revenue forecast because PC demand is down throughout the whole chain. But I also think people are concerned about any time when the Treasury reverses strategy or changes strategy. It creates an issue of credibility and makes people wonder if Treasury really knows what's going on here.
Steve Leisman among those we call on to explain days like this one. Steve, as always, thanks.
Welcome back. So the questions I have for you are, how has this crappy economy specifically affected you and in your life with your spending habits as well as just your whole overall living situation, etc.? The second question I have is, do you think that redistributing the funds to the credit markets will actually help boost the economy, or do you feel like the economy won't get better until there are more jobs in the market? Because right now, I think that a lot of the reason why people aren't spending money and aren't applying for credit and trying to get credit is because the economy is so bad that there aren't jobs, and so a vast majority of people are unemployed and can't even fathom getting credit because it just won't happen with the tight restrictions on it. The other question I had for you is, with the Christmas season ahead, do you expect to spend less than you did last year? Out of curiosity, because I know that the economy was supposedly not so great then, and so I'm curious if that the amount that you plan to spend has gone down, or if it's kind of stayed the same this year opposed to last year. The last question I have for you is, do you trust Henry Paulson with your tax dollars? I mean, he makes a lot of decisions about new taxes that are going to be, that we're going to feel, and that, we're all this money is being put towards these things, and this is our tax dollars. It's not like this is just money that's coming from nowhere or coming from, So I'm curious if you feel like he's making the right decisions, or do you think that there's somebody that should take his place? Go ahead and leave the answers to these questions in the comment section below, or you can go ahead and make a video response. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
MSNBC.com, America's #1 online choice for political news and campaign coverage. MSNBC.com and Decision 08, the #1 choice.
Want to get the full first hour of Today to Go? Today podcasts are ready to download right now at podcast.msnbc.com.
Get your Morning Joe to go. Text Joe to 622-639 for daily alerts on guests, stories, and more. Standard messaging rates apply.
The chicken's legs are wet. Tehran,